Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. On this show, we have two very special guests. We have Einaudi from Hemmings along with Ryan Douthit from Driving Sports TV. Now, today's show is going to consist of our favorite, well, I shouldn't say our favorite, but vehicles that are valued up to $15,000, or I should say that you can get for up to $15,000 from each decade, starting from the 1960s and going up to the early 2000s through 2010. So obviously these vehicles, all of them can be found on the Hemmings website when we're talking about the Hemmings auctions or the Hemmings classified, of which we have 25 to 30,000 cars at any given time. With that being said, let's dive into this show. We're each going to give you our 5 top picks, and we'll go from there. How you guys doing?
Doing good. I didn't know we had homework for 5 for each category, though, so I might be a little lacking on this.
5.
And these are cars that we personally would spend our own money on, not necessarily we're telling people to buy them. Correct?
That's correct. I think the whole thing about this one was, we get asked constantly, I've got, say, $15,000. What can I get that's fun, that's cool, that I can get into the hobby for that $15,000? And these are what I'm going to call enthusiast cars that aren't going to break the bank and that might need a little work here and there. Only some of them, though. But that will get you into the car hobby and that you could start having fun with immediately for 15 grand or under.
Yeah. So these aren't going to be anyone's dream cars, but at the same time, these are going to be cars that probably run and drive, probably don't have major body or paint issues.
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. And the other part about these cars is you can start getting into these right now, and all of them are fun. And that 15K will all get you running and driving. Actually, quite nice examples of cars that you can start playing with right now. And a lot of them are cars that people might not have thought of, or maybe they have. Either way, we're going to throw out our favorites. So.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind is that the current state of the market right now, like if you want to get like a 240Z, you're going to spend through the roof on something like that. Something that you might consider like even 3 years ago was an enthusiast car you could get for pennies is like, so I think that the ones we're going to go with today are probably going to be a little bit more out of left field than somebody might expect, but you might find a gem in there.
Yeah, that's true. And Ryan, that's a great point. We all know right now the used car market for any used car is bananas. I mean, people are asking money, and the crazy part is getting money for cars that you never thought you would buy for, like when somebody tells me that my 2016 Toyota pickup truck is worth $40,000 with 45,000 miles on it. It's like, are you kidding me? But that's what the market is doing. However, there are some gems in here that you could still pick up for good money. And have fun with. So there we go. So we're going to start off with our first decade, the 1960s. We're talking 1960 through 1969. And like I said, the goal, each one of us had to come up with a good car that you could get into for under 15 grand. Now, Ryan is wincing a little bit because right now he's like, I don't know what to,
I don't think this is Ryan's era.
This is not my era. But I do have some cars and actually, the funny thing is, like, I was thinking, 1960s, a Nash Metropolitan is something I always wanted. But the problem is that the ones you can buy for that price, you're dipping into the 1950s, and they're a little on the rough side. But I'm kind of surprised, actually. Like, there's a British American compact, the 1958 AMC version of the same, a little over 9,000 right now on the Hemmings auctions, which looks pretty cool.
So it's a what? Say it again. This is your pick for the 1960s. You got a state car.
It's a 1958, though. It's a 1958 AMC.
But that's not 1960.
See, I know that's the problem. It's like the 1960s ones, the price goes up because they were probably better.
All right, Ryan.
I'm going to go back to the drawing board. You guys.
You go back to Rob. All right, you go. What is your choice from 1960 to 1969?
For me, I love the 60s. You can't go wrong in this era. Almost anything is going to be cool. Like it's like the last era before, safety and emissions took all the fun out of everything, right? So,
correct.
You could, 60s Mustangs, awesome. You can definitely get a 6-cylinder one or 8-cylinder one. There's lots of Chrysler B bodies. I've had lots of them in this price range. You're not going to get, a 68 Charger or a 69 Roadrunner at this price, but you could get a Belvedere, a couple other things. But where I put my money recently in this price range is a Chevy pickup. So that'd be my choice. I've got a 1960 Chevy C10, super cool. you'll have lots of options.
No, I'm kind of surprised you could find those, because it just seems to me like either they're beat to hell or they're commanding too high of a price. Were you able to find some on the listings?
Yeah, we'll find some. You'll definitely find Chevy pickups.
Well, it's not even, I think, finding one. Rob, you have one, don't you?
Yeah, I got a cool one for half that price just a few years ago. So I would say on a good day, the one I've got's worth 15 grand, on a good day, and it's awesome. It's a 1960 C10 short bed fleet side, and it's been hot rodded with a little crate 350. It's got disc brakes. It's got original paint, no rust. It's an awesome truck. I love it. Super cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a good find, because what happens is everybody, when they think Chevy C10, right, they think like, late 60s, 1969 through the late 70s, early 80s, and we're talking about the square bodies, of course. Prices of square bodies have shot through the roof.
Oh, yeah.
15K is not going to buy you what it used to buy you as far as that goes, but there are still some gems out there where you could find, square body long beds, not the short beds, but the long bed pickups.
This is true.
And they're out there. So that's a pretty good choice.
And the 60 to 66 is going to be a little more affordable. And personally, I like the look of those the best. I think they're just funky, cool Americana, and they're awesome trucks. A good little community go along with them. You can find parts. I mean, they made 1 million of them. So
do you have a upgrade plan for that truck that you just bought?
New tires, and then just drive it.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Ryan, did you find one yet?
Yeah, so this one's actually going to throw back. It dips into the 70s, but you can get good examples for the 1960s. It was one that I was actually supposed to get from my stepfather, and I never got it because my parents, they divorced. So I never ended up with the car that I was promised from when I was 13 all the way till I was 17. And it is an MGB.
Oh. Okay.
MGB. You can still get those. Actually, they're cheap. Now, is it a problematic relationship? Probably.
Yes. But I've spent a long time working on those things, and
yeah, I mean, you're going to work on a lot, but I think the nice thing is that for me, they kind of evoke an era of my childhood, right? When I was looking, thinking about driving. I ended up getting a motorcycle instead, but looking at that, it's a convertible. They're almost all red. It has a look. And if you're going to get something like an MGB, you're going to drive it like 4 weekends a year. That's probably it. And the rest of the time, you're probably working on it. But there we go. That's my pick.
Okay.
What do you got, Mike?
So I'm going to go something a little different. I'm going to go with a 1960 through 69 Ford Falcon. And the original Falcons from, I think the first generation was 60 to 63. You could tell they're still a little curved. They've got some really nice curves to them, but they're tiny cars. They're like, little commuter cars. And the cool part about the Falcon is the run was actually only about 3 years for specific body styles. Like it was 60 to 63, it was 64, 65, and then it was 66 through 1970. But for this case, we'll say 69. The ones that are most sought after for the Falcons, you're talking 60, 64, 65. The bodies are a little more squared. Those might take you higher than 15K. But the early ones, the 60 to 63, and then the later ones, the 66 through 70, are actually quite affordable. And you can get those for between, I want to say 10 and 15 grand. Now, some will have a straight six, some will have the small V8s with like a 289 or a 260. And they're good. Yeah, there you go, Rob. There you go.
That is a good looking car.
It's a good looking little car.
Would love that.
And again, when we started to talk about this, we were talking about stuff that was also affordable. Again, these aren't dream cars. These are entry cars into the hobby for not a lot of money. And, again, we're all talking about classics. We're not talking about newer cars. I mean, we will when we get into the, the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s. But for this case, that's my pick, the Ford Falcon. Great little car. You could get them in 4-doors. You can get them in convertibles. You can get them in wagons. You can get them in coupes. And
you can even get them in a truck format with a Ranchero.
You can. That's absolutely correct. And they're great. They're just good little cars.
Probably haven't been abused. They weren't
Falcons. That's correct. Falcons have not been beat on. So if you find one, with a straight six, you
might get the little old lady car. You might actually.
You might.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
And don't discount the 4-doors because the 4-doors are very,
I will.
very huge
There's
fan.
no way you'll ever make me buy a 4-door.
I like 4-doors.
Never.
All right. I'm
No.
like the only one.
Yeah.
All right.
Rob's kids are off to college, so he doesn't need 4-doors anymore.
I never did. I always just made them crawling back.
All right. So now we're going to bump over to 1970 through 1979, the wonderful 1970s. So, all right. Who wants to shoot first to the stars with this? You want to do, well, Ryan, you flubbed the first one in the 60s, so we'll lead off with Rob on this one, and then you get first pick of the 80s.
Yeah, and I didn't even have to think about mine. This was a piece of cake. Alfa Romeo Spider. No problem. The Series 2.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
No question for me. I love those. I've driven them. Our own Mike Austin did a great buyer's guide on them that takes you through all the eras. 70s will be a Series 2. They lopped off the boat tail right at 1970. They're still they're still kind of affordable. There's one in the back alley here I could probably pick up for $3,500 parked outside. Now you don't want to really buy a rough Alfa Spider probably, right? But for 15 grand, you could probably get a really nice one. I know of one locally that's for sale in there, and if you're lucky enough to live in the Seattle area or the Bay Area, there's a big community. Yeah. You're going to need some people's expertise.
You're going to need friends with that one, aren't you?
You're going to need some friends. But the car itself is a pretty robust, solid little car, and blast to drive, unique in Italian style at a affordable price.
Yep.
That's a good pick, dude. Nice pick.
Thank you.
All right, Ryan, what do you got?
I have a blanket answer, and that's pretty much anything that you can get that's a Japanese car from that era. I love the 1970s Japanese cars. Whether you're looking at a CVCC 1600 from Honda, or you're looking at like a tiny little K car or whatever you can get. Well, they're all kind of K cars of that era.
Yeah.
Didn't they all
small,
rust?
Funny little. Because they're so small in that era. That's before they added. It's before they really successfully competed with the American market. They were basically just bringing over what they had. And so the pickups from that era, the cars from that era, the tough thing is that they're really popular right now. So to find a good running example for under 15 grand, you're going to have to compromise and not go with one of the like mainstream. Like you can't get like a 240, for example. Right. You can't get anything that's going to be like sporty nature. You might be able to get an RX-7, like a late 70s RX-7.
Yes, you could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
I love
that. Is also,
RX-7.
speaking of problematic
Gorgeous
relationships.
Oh, yeah.
I've owned two, and I buy them, I have them, I love them, I hate them, I get rid of it, I buy another one, and then it's like, the first gen, they sold so many RX-7s in the first year. I think they sold like that first body style. I think they sold like 250,000 of them or something. It was nuts. So even an RX-3, which was the precursor to the RX-7, which there might actually be some good examples, but the problem there is rust is a huge issue.
Yes.
They weren't very good at rust prevention. The motors are pretty simple, so I don't think there'll be any problems with motors, but some of the earlier, more out there examples, you might have trouble finding parts.
Can you find a 510 for this kind of money anymore?
No, 510s, there's no way. No way.
This is so funny.
To the roof.
That was like my common high school, just beater car. Everybody had one. And
I had a Civic.
And then the other one is going to be a Civic, right? But I just don't see those around anymore, any of those.
We see them every now and then at like the Cars and Coffee. Like, if you go to the Bay Area Cars and Coffee, you'll see 510s around, and you'll see, CVCCs around and stuff like that.
And the best thing to do is to avoid, some of the big, like, I mean, I hate to say it, but avoid some of the big auction sites, because some of those are like the super clean examples. Yeah, but if you can like look in like Craigslist, you might find one that was like left on the side of the road, or somebody just kept in their garage, and you should be able to get it for a reasonable price.
Yeah.
All right, Mike.
So
what's your call?
My choice. So I've got, should be a surprise, but it's I'm going to go with 75 through 79 Chevrolet Corvette. So basically we're talking about a C3 Corvette.
I do not like those.
And the reason I threw the see, you know what? It's interesting. Corvettes of that era are love and hate. Yeah. Because in 75 was the year, actually 74 was the year that I think 75, when they transitioned to the kind of molded bumpers like the fiberglass bumpers in the front, they transferred away from the chrome. But as cars, they were actually great cars. They're not fast, right? The Corvettes of the late 70s were absolute cruiser
and they couldn't
cars.
turn.
No, they weren't terrible, but they weren't great. But again, you put it in context, nothing in the 1970s was
to be
really
fair,
that good
yeah,
from an American car perspective, right?
Right.
But the cool part about the Corvette was great cruiser, good styling. You had T-tops. You could get them in 4-speeds, automatics. A lot of them had, different versions of the 350. I think the most powerful one you could get was probably around 220 horsepower. You could find them all day up to $15,000, especially like 75, 76s, again, not fast, but cool. And then if you want, like 75 through 77 had the fixed rear glass, which was kind of, the last kind of bastion of the Stingray, so to speak. Whereas once you hit 78, they went to the large hatch, right? The glass hatch rear glass. And that was where the styling changed. And that was kind of like the disco era too, where you saw like the anniversary edition cars and things like that.
Yeah.
The cars were made up until 82, I believe, was the last year of the C4.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, the C3. I personally really like them. I think the body style is really cool. I think it's super curvy and sexy. They've never hit a stride in these cars.
Never.
And I'm getting kind of antsy. Like I actually might buy one because I don't know. I kind of like it. Like I've had.
You have room in your garage, Mike?
I do, because our Hemmings Suburban has now hit the road to its new owner, so I got a spot.
Fill it.
So you never know. It might have an 80s, late 70s, early 80s vet in the garage at some point. So that is my 1970s choice.
Nice.
C3 Corvette. So moving on. Now this is to the 80s. This is good.
I'm going to start this one. Can I start this one?
Yes, you can. The 80s. Now, mind you, if you look at me and you look at Rob and you look at Ryan, these were our car years, because we are not young men anymore, but we know what we're talking about kind of know what we're talking about. But yeah,
you told Ryan the no Subaru rule though before we started this, right?
I did not tell him the no Subaru.
But it's okay. I'm not picking a Subaru for the 80s.
Oh, all right. So Ryan, go ahead. So this is our cars up to 15 grand from the 1980s. All right, Ryan, go.
So this is a car where if you roll up to Cars and Coffee, you will have everybody swarm you. And you can still get them for under 10 grand, actually. They come with an inline 6, and they have all-wheel drive. Are you ready for the AMC Eagle?
Oh, good choice.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
That is okay.
And that one looks like a really good example too.
No, a good friend of mine has one of those, and I grew up with Jen, and then one of my best buddies in high school had one of those. They're cool. They're super.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, it's like the cool factors off the charts.
Right, that's the original Subaru Outback.
It is.
Yeah, it's the original crossover. I mean, it's the granddaddy of them all. And I'm looking at that going, do I have room in my garage? That's actually a good example right there on Hemmings.
And Ryan, that was a straight 6, an AMC straight 6. That was pretty bomb-proof. I mean, those motors were pretty indestructible.
Yeah. Can you get parts though? I haven't actually looked. Like, what's the AMC parts situation?
Yeah, you're fine.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, that's
they put those in everything.
I'm just making that up. But Jen's never had that much trouble.
Today on Rob's
that's good enough for me.
History lesson. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, Rob. What do you got from the 1980s?
Well, I'm going to go with the car that won every single comparison test in every single magazine in the 80s, whether it was Road and Track, Car and Driver, Motor Trend. Yeah. Gorgeous car. Strangely affordable. This is the only one of my picks that I've never driven. But I'm going to say Porsche 944.
Outstanding.
I think they're undervalued right now still.
So the Porsche 944 is, we had one. We had, I think it was an 88 944S. Great car. Great car.
They look cool. I mean, they look almost exotic to me, they look great on the street.
Here's the thing. Not only do they look good, but they are absolutely fantastic cars. I mean, the original, it was basically an Audi motor in that thing, right? Audi 4-cylinder. But when they bumped them up and you could go for the turbos, they were pretty quick. I mean, they were solid 150 mile an hour cars. But the best part about them is they're built like little bank vaults. This is when Porsche was really, you would close the door on that car and you would get that Porsche thunk. But they're great cars. The other part is those motors, if well maintained, are very reliable. You see them routinely with 150, 200,000 miles on them. And there is a massive 944 community out there. And for those that don't know, the 940, obviously it went 924, 944, and then the last rendition was the 968, which is kind of ultra rare. That's a great choice, dude. That is a killer choice.
We had one closed in the auction, Hemmings auction yesterday for around 17, but it was a really nice one. So I'm confident you can find a good one.
Yeah, I'm looking actually on Hemmings right now, and I see an 86 for 14.8 asking price.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
when you first mentioned that, I'm like, oh, those have to all be over 15, and they're not.
No, it's weird. It's weird. And then Craigslist, you can find them for $5. I mean, they're pretty roached. But the interesting one that I always liked is the 924S, which is basically the 944 shoved into the narrower body.
It was like the development mule.
Yeah, and I want it with the plaid seats. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's choice, dude.
Thank you.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice.
All right. All right. So I'm going to go with, well, go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was just going to say, Mike, what do you got?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to go with, it was made into the 90s, but the first year I kind of squeaked in right here. 1989 Ford Taurus SHO.
Oh, yeah.
Now Rob is giggling, but I'm going to throw this out there. There's a couple of reasons. One, 4-door. I like 4-door. I like grandpa
gangster.
cars.
Seriously, gangster looks on that.
But so here's the thing. Came out in 89. You could only get it in a 5-speed manual. The motor was made by Yamaha with one of the coolest intakes you could get. You're talking 220 horsepower, some of the best seats in the business. It was actually, that V6 was amazing. It revved to 7,000 RPM, so it was kind of a screamer. 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds. It topped out at 140 miles an hour. And it's one of the best sleepers of the 1980s. And you got to remember, this is when the Ford Taurus was outselling the Honda Accord. And so when Ford came out with the SHO, it was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was a hammer.
It was a real thing.
I mean,
it was a hammer.
Yeah.
And even by today's standards, it's actually a very, very good car. It's very modern to drive. It feels like you're driving a normal car. It's before screens came in and everything else. And it's just a good car, and the best one in the world you can buy for under $15,000.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah, that would be a good. I've known a few people that have had them, and they absolutely love them. They have no complaints about them.
Yeah, good cars. So yes, I just squeaked it in with the 89. So there you go.
Nice.
There you go. That works. That works.
All right. So now we're going to move on to 1990s, 1990 through 1999. Ryan, what you got?
The answer is always Miata.
Wow.
First generation Miata.
I knew that was going to be in here.
I've owned a couple of them, and it's another one of those cars. I buy it, I have it. I actually know with Miatas, I don't have a love-hate. I just love them, but they're really impractical because 2-seater, and I have kids, and you can't put them in the trunk. So that doesn't quite work, but you can still get a first generation with the little peppy. And I actually like the first version of the first gen body had a little peppy 1.6 in it. I prefer that to the later 1.8. But a lot of people want the 1.8. So I'm looking at Hemmings right now. You can get clean 1990s all day long for under 15 grand.
Nice.
And I mean, you're going to spend more than honestly, I think you should be buying because they are popular, but you're going to spend probably between 12 and 15 for a really good example. And if you go on Craigslist and really want to roll the dice, you could probably get something much cheaper, but you have no idea what the history or, that's Craigslist has its own special kind of listings.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the Miata is a great car. We have a couple that we run on the racetrack, and the nice part about the Miata is, one, the community is massive. If you don't know something, the community will help you out, and you
probably know somebody who owns one too, because there's so many of them.
Yeah, right. And it is, for those, when the Miata first came out, everybody kind of poo-pooed on it a little bit. It is a monumentally fantastic sports car.
Absolutely.
Because you can spin that sucker between 4,000 and 7,000 RPM every single day. Nothing's going to happen. It's a great driving experience. Front engine, rear wheel drive. That's a great pick, Ryan. It's an
authentic sports car that doesn't break the bank and will drive just as good today as it will 5 years from now. I mean,
that's right.
They're unbreakable. That says the guy who broke one. But anyway,
that's all right. All right, Rob, what do you got?
I struggled a little bit with this one. I think it's because I'm just not that inspired by 90s cars. I don't think it was the greatest era. At first, I was thinking E46. For a while, you could still get E46 M3 under 15, but I don't think that's happening.
No, not anymore.
I was thinking, and I almost bought one of these many times, Fox Body LX 5 liter Fox Body, but not that exciting. I was thinking the last Arc 7, but what I landed on is I actually think of more of an 80s car, but Saab 900.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
good one.
That's a good one, dude.
End of the line at 93 was the last year, and they're so cool.
That's the one with the key down by the transmission, right? Yeah.
That's my pick. And you could get a really nice one for 15 grand still.
That's a killer choice, dude. Those cars, it's the classic Saab body style, right? From the 70s that carried through the 80s and into the early 90s.
Yep.
They are unbelievably usable cars because of the hatchback. They could fit a ton of stuff. They look good. They're fun to drive. That's a killer pick, dude.
My college roommate had one. He actually launched it into a tree, and he walked away from he didn't walk away. He rode in an ambulance.
He limped away.
He limped away. But
we used to take them skiing all the time. They're great in the snow.
Yep. And there is a community for Saab too. So if you have any issues, it might not be your neighbor, but your neighbor might know somebody.
It's going to be some college professor too.
It's not Miata big, but it's big.
Yeah. So that's my pick.
Yeah,
dude, that's a good one. I like that. Ooh, I didn't even think about that. That's great. All right, for me, I'm going with first generation 96 through 99 Porsche 986 Boxster.
And
I knew it
on this list.
I knew
well, it makes sense, right? When you look at them, it makes sense. You can get a great Boxster for up to $15,000.
That's probably the most solid pick, honestly.
Right? It's 2.5 liter flat six engine. Right around 200 horsepower, 5-speed transmission. You have to think when the Boxster first came out, everybody kind of jumped on it and they were like, well, it's not a 911. The Boxster was never meant to be a 911. The Boxster is a fantastic, in the same vein where the Miata is an amazing sports car.
Yeah, it's a Porsche Miata.
The Boxster is an amazing sports car, right? The chassis is great. It's mid-engine. Just fabulous things. And you got to remember 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds, and it goes 150 miles an hour. Roached out ones, you could literally buy them for $4,000. And I
love the silver with the red too in that era.
I almost just bought one.
The show car.
Yeah. I almost just bought one about a month ago, and it was a 49,000 mile car, and I could have got it for 11 grand.
Yeah, but it was guards red, and you're not like a red.
It was guards red, and I don't fit. That was was the final thing. I physically don't fit in the car. It's like my nose was at the windshield level.
There's been a couple cars that I've loved that I aspired to own for years, and then I finally sit in it. I'm like, well, that's a dream ruined. The Prelude, the Honda Prelude, I really wanted one. Don't fit. Lotus Elan, don't fit. I mean, I don't. Come on. I was like 16. I know. Oh, that's hot. It's a James Bond car. Whatever. But
okay. All right. Well, now we're up to our last decade, 2000 to 2009. Again, up to $15,000. Now, this is a pretty broad one. Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff out there. Not really though. No. So
this was the easiest one for me.
Ooh, I'm curious now.
Yeah, Ryan, let's go with Rob
I'll go with Rob. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
It's the 2005 to 2009 Mustang. For sure, I've owned a couple of them. The Bullet would be my choice. We just had one close in the auction at 12 grand last week.
Wow, really?
Which seemed a little cheap.
That does seem cheap for that car.
Yeah. Awesome cars. Fun to drive. They look cool.
Bomb-proof.
Cheap, bomb-proof. What else do you want? There are a million of them. Yeah, some people are just like, Mustangs, but I think they're cool. I like them, and I didn't have to think about this one, so that's my pick.
No, and parts are $4 if you break
them.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so there's that. So, all right, Ryan, what do you got?
I actually got two on this one, and they're two extremes. First off, you can get an RX-8 of that era.
Are you kidding me?
Super cheap, and they're horribly unreliable, and they get 18 miles to the gallon, but on the track they're really fun.
Don't they suck down oil? I remember having
you have to add oil while you're filling in gas at the same time.
I was going to say, because I had one on the track at the press launch. I did 6 laps in the oil light,
and they're like,
and the engineer was like, "Oh yeah, they use a lot of oil." I'm like, "I did 6 laps," and he was like, Yeah, no, they use the oil to cool part of the motor, and that's I was like, well,
Yep. they're the highest polluting motor that was ever in production in the modern era. They have the worst mileage to the gallon.
And this is the car you're recommending.
They are really good looking. And they're fun.
They are fun.
And they're 9,000 RPM. I mean, you feel like you are in a race car, but not the best. So the one I will actually practically recommend is you cannot buy like a Subaru WRX for that price. You used to be able to.
This up. He gives us the shit box early, and then he's like.
But now you can't get really a WRX for under 15 grand of that era. They're just too expensive. And I don't even know. If you can find a 2.5 RS, that would be a really good car for that money, because those were like. Around 2008 is a really nice one. But if you really want to have like under 15 grand all day long, but still have all-wheel drive and a fun to drive package, Subaru Legacy. It's under the radar. It's the same engine as the 2.5 RS. Especially if you're outside of Denver and Seattle, you can get them all day long under 15 grand. And they even made manual transmission versions, and they especially had a Spec B, which you might be able to find for under 15 if you're finding the right seller. And that had the 6-speed out of the STI in a normal package. You might even find a turbo for under that price. I don't know. I haven't looked at the pricing lately on them, but you could definitely get a Legacy with all-wheel drive, solid motor. Now, the one thing you have to look out for is in that era, there were some head gasket issues. But if the car has been maintained, like all the shops do head gaskets. It's not hard. You just buy it, take it to the shop, get the head gasket done. It'll run another 50,000 miles, no problem.
So I'll agree with that, because I actually... one of the first new cars I bought was a 1998 Subaru Legacy GT. And I beat that car.
And it's a good looking car.
Oh, it was a great looking car. Had the hood scoop, the wing on the back, the 16-inch wheels on it. I literally couldn't kill it. And I took it all. I took it on the beach. Like, I took it everywhere. Great car. The only thing is a little light on power. It was 160 horsepower. And
they were underpowered with the 2.5.
With the 2.5. But solid choice. And mine was a manual, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. And the manual transmissions in that car, it's a straight 50-50 split with a viscous center diff. Nice. So you just have 50-50 power all the time. It doesn't feel like some of today's cars where they feel like front wheel drive cars. It kills your MPGs, but for an extra fun car, can't go wrong with that.
No, that was good. What was that? When was that? That was made from 98 until what, Ryan? That first gen Legacy, or the second?
That was a second gen, because I actually have a first gen downstairs, and it's a 91. I think it was 98 for the second gen, which is kind of the rounded scallop sides. I think that was 98 through 2004-ish. I should actually know this, but sorry,
it might be 3, but yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, somewhere around there. And that would be like, and there's some wagon styles. The wagons are a little more expensive because people want them, but the wagons of that era, such good looking wagon, especially like black them out, you dump them, they just look amazing. Anyway.
Good choice.
Thank you.
All right, so mine, this is not going to be a surprise for Rob. I'm going to go with a 2006 to 2009 Chrysler SRT8.
Yep.
And the reason I would lump the Charger and the Magnum into that, but the Magnums have shot up. The SRT8 Magnums have shot up in Magnum, in value. I used to have one and I adored it, but the 300 SRT8s are fantastic. They're
fantastic. Yeah,
they are. That was the original off the Mercedes E-Class platform. It still had a lot of Mercedes running gear. It utilized the 5-speed Mercedes transmission.
They're awesome.
But under the hood, 6.1 liter Hemi, 425 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque. It was a rocket. It would 168 mile an hour top speed and 0 to 60 in 4.9.
That's nuts.
The beauty of it is the 300s, those were kind of like the mature one to buy. Like, all the hot rodders bought the Charger because Charger, and then people like me bought the Magnum because I wanted station wagon. They look like a big hearse. But if you could find one of these cars with low miles, and by low miles, they're totally fine. They do eat ball joints at around 80,000 miles. But otherwise, absolutely spectacular cars with some of the best seats in the business.
Yeah, one of my favorite press cars. I mean, that thing was just a highway monster.
Bomber.
Yeah.
So there you go. Those are our choices. up until the early 2000s, right to 2009.
It was quite a journey, wasn't it?
It was a massive journey spanning from Ford Falcons to Saabs to Alfa Romeos to Chryslers. Eclectic group of automobiles.
Who got left out here? I didn't hear Mercedes once.
Once, because Mercedes. Well,
there's probably some good examples, but you got to get really super nerdy in the Mercedes, saying you got to get this one, not that one. And I just don't know enough about the Mercedes to make recommendations with them of that era.
So from the 1980s, like, all right, we'll do a bonus round. All right, we'll do a quick bonus round. We'll do a bonus round. So if
who got left
behind?
out?
Who got left behind? Yeah. So if you're talking about Mercedes, I would jump in and
we got to get prepped here for a bonus round. Okay, now I'm ready for the bonus round.
Ryan's got the vodka bottle or the gin bottle.
A little early, isn't it? Maybe not.
I'm going to throw out a 500 to 560 Mercedes-Benz SEC. That is a bucket list car for me. It's something I've always wanted. You can absolutely get them for under $15,000, but the key with anything German is maintenance, because that is massive. However, those Mercedes are some of the last, what I'm going to call quote unquote fantastic, truly hand-built cars that find a good one, bomb-proof, plenty fast, look amazing to this day. If you're going to get an S-Class like a 420 SEL or a 560 SEL, those prices are well under what the coupes are, but great cars. And something that I, always wanted.
Audi didn't make the list, but I'm thinking an Audi TT might be a fun one for some people.
Oh yeah,
I guess you can get.
I've never driven one because I don't.
Right,
fit.
I've never.
But the one thing you have to keep in mind is that the TTs of the eras that might be affordable are going to have a lot of issues with the Bosch electronics in it.
Yeah.
That was a huge issue on those early ones.
But they're really cool looking.
They are cool looking, but the problem with electronic issues, as you know, is that you cannot fix those cars sometimes.
Right. So the throwaways, like
basically, yes, yeah. My in-law, my stepdad had a GTI of the same era, and he would turn the radio on and the window would go down, and that was fine in the summertime, but in the winter it sucked. And it was the same. It was the exact same car, basically, because it was the same. They just put a different body on it. And it was horrible car. They loved it, but it was horrible.
Yeah. And no one said Toyota here.
Well, can you get
MR2? But see, I was thinking MR2 possibly, but I prefer the Miata between the MR2 because the MR2 is too twitchy for me. And so just because of that, I will. And I think that's probably the issue with the Toyotas is that you can't say like classic 4Runner or anything like that because it's all overpriced. And on the other hand, they're little fun to drive cars. They're typically where other cars were.
You can get a little
better.
Get a nice 3rd gen 4Runner in that price, and those are cool.
What 4Runner prices have?
So they're nuts,
dude. So everything Toyota truck right now, even stuff from the 80s, has gone insane. When I look at like 1985 Toyota 4Runners for $18,000, I'm like, are y'all crazy? Like that? It's not.
So even though you might be able to get one for like under 15 grand, but it's going to be not a good deal. I bought a 96 4Runner about 10 years ago for $5 grand, and that's what you should spend on one of those. They're really good, but
So Toyota didn't. No one said Toyota.
Yeah.
Any other brands that we left out?
Nissan.
Some of the early Acuras are really good, and they're not really commanding too much of a price difference. Like if you go with like a Legend or something like that,
my folks had
you can't get a GSR. Those are overpriced, which is too bad because I
would love a Legend Coupe. Like a manual Legend Coupe, but those are like 15, 18 grand.
Yeah, you're getting close. But if you go with one of like the less desirable ones, just Acura across the board, all of those were a really good driving experience. They were premium interiors for their eras. They all came with nav, I think, with the exception of the smaller ones. I think any Acura from the.
How about that little Infiniti that was like a hopped up 350,
Camry?
Right? No, like
you're talking about the G35 sedan.
Yeah, those are pretty. Those are
I
nice
hate
looking.
those cars.
Yeah. Really,
dude? I hate those cars so much, and I'm gonna tell you why. Just because every goofball Guido in New York that couldn't afford anything would go out and they would buy a butt-assed, just tired G35 with 200,000 miles on it, and every engine light, every light on the dash would be illuminated.
Okay, Rob, just note that his trigger word is Infinity.
Right.
I hate
that one's
them.
off the list.
Listen, I like Infinities. In fact, if someone out there has a super ultra, and I'm talking ultra clean M45, okay, I'm in. First gen M45.
Post a comment below.
Okay, like those cars. G35, take them all, throw them in the garbage,
pressure,
and then burn them. I hate them. I hate them so much.
That sounds like a good closing note, I think.
Yeah. So there you go, everybody. Those were our picks from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s for our good cars to get into the hobby for up to $15,000.
You should say the good cars to get into the hobby and the RX-7.
And the RX-7, right. For up to $15K. I think the next show, what are we going to do for the next buyer's show?
We could go crazy and bump it up to 25 or something. That's getting pretty.
I think we should focus on one era of cars, like maybe just maybe for like trucks, just trucks of a certain era would be a good thing. Like what trucks can you actually get these days that are good deals, as opposed to,
Okay. All right. So
truck show? Do we
show.
consensus on the truck show, and we'll figure out what the details are later. Okay.
Cool. Truck show.
So there you go. So that's our car buying up to $15,000, 1960 through early 2000s. Ryan, thank you. Rob, thank you. Everybody, thank you. Post your comments below. Give us your suggestions. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. And we will see you next time on the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast and hit that subscribe button. And we'll come to you every week.